How do you think that went?
I have no idea. I am leaving this entirely in your camp. I am not responsible for any of the nonsense that accrues here.
What's happening, party people? Welcome to Punchboard Party. My name is Daniel. This is Father Greg, and we are actually going to talk about our top 100 board games of all time for 2023.
That's right. This is not a full scale like we did before, where we analyzed our 10 by 10 by 10, 90 to 80 and so on. We're just going to have a broad kind of overview of some of the highlights. We've redone our top 100 for this year, and so just kind of some of the big movers that stood out to us.
Yeah, so if you want to check out our full list of top 100 games, you can check out this video here. It has us just reading our lists.
It's like speed dating, but for board games.
That's right. You'll get to see a lot of board game boxes.
That's right.
And be like, ooh, shiny. But this video, we're actually going to talk about some of the movers and shakers from last year's list to this year's list and what we think about those moves. Mm-hmm. So, Father Greg, why don't you kind of take us away with kind of guiding this discussion in terms of what new games hopped onto your list.
Cool. Yeah. So of my new games, so I think first of all, it's worthwhile saying that this is kind of an exercise in proving that top 100s, while they're good, are not an infallible resource. At any given moment, my games can switch 30, 40 places on this list.
I noticed that for myself too.
Yeah, a top 100 are still games that I love, but yeah, the difference between a game that's 30 and a difference in a game that's 70, that can be based on the day.
Well, one thing that I noticed is that as I was going through Pub Meeple, it was really interesting to pay attention to, because you just kind of have two games pop up, and all of a sudden, your first thoughts kind of come. And it was really interesting to be I'm being swayed to pick this game because of the colors in the game. Mm-hmm. Or I'm being swayed to pick this game because the last time I played it,
that's right,
it was really a great experience versus this time where it wasn't. So it does have that kind of swaying nature. Mm-hmm. I actually tried really hard to be aware of that this time around, though, and try and be a little bit more okay, calm down. Mm-hmm. Because I felt the last time I did my list, there was a lot of recency bias.
Right.
And I have some of that here, but I tried to kind of keep it tempered.
For sure, and I think I'll see some of that in my list too, because my new games, I had some that were just new, that were part of our best games of 2022, which we talked about in another video. So games like Boon Lake and Messina and Praga, all these new games that I played that really skyrocketed to the top. So those are kind of Boon Lake ended up at 9. I was really shocked by that. I was
Boon Lake's really, at 9?
Yeah, it went really to the top. But
I'm surprised because we could not pay attention while we were listing off our games.
That's right.
I did not know what was happening. But 9!
Yeah.
Wow.
But then also some other kind of surprises. For example, this guy over here in the past week has commented that I do not like this game, and yet it showed up at 74. And that's Crusaders, Thy Will Be Done.
I thought you were just so on it.
I enjoyed this game. It's 74, man.
It's just we played it, and I was huh? Because I was really impressed with it, and you were yeah, good.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. So yeah, 74. Also, making the list of new games was Mind Management. That was a big kind of new game for me.
Yeah,
Jekyll vs. Hyde came in at 97. Fox in the Forest was at 37. So I do prefer 60 spaces more. So says the infallible top 100.
See, so the Fox in the Forest for me ended up being 111.
Okay.
And Jekyll vs. Hyde is somewhere. Jekyll vs. Hyde came in at 43.
Mm-hmm.
So
divergence of opinion on that.
But, for sure.
But so that was the new games that hit the list. But then I also had a bunch of old games as well, just old classics that kind of maybe just because I played them more recently. Right. One of those was Rajas of the Ganges.
Okay.
Wasn't on my top 100 the first time, but it popped in at 89 this year.
So what changed?
I think we had played this. We played this last year, in the past year.
Okay, was that with John and Colin?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just like, yeah, I think getting something to the table, right? It
Yes.
just kind of like boosted up that extra. It wasn't far off my top 100 last year, but
Right.
it just moved up, a couple spaces.
No, but that makes a difference because that happened for quite a few things here.
For sure, yeah. So I had a lot of games like that. Obsession was another one that wasn't in my top 100, but showed up this year at 92.
Okay. And you had played it before?
I've played Obsession before, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And just the past couple plays, especially they came out with like a kind of a new edition of Obsession that's really, really nice.
Okay.
And so, yeah, just everything. Yeah, I really love Obsession. But those are just a few kind of highlights of new games that showed up on my list.
Nice.
That were thought kind of interesting.
Yeah, so for me, the big kind of new games to the list were things like Mechs vs. Minions, Dwellings of Eldervale, so these games that got onto our best of the month lists, where
Right.
I said were my best of the month, so that reflected in the list. Orichalcum made it quite high on the list, so that's my newest entry to the list. So
Wow.
that's the game I've played the most recently that is on this list. And I think it deserves its spot. Abyss is still higher than it, Five Tribes is still higher than it.
Right.
But it's just like a Bruno game that is nice and punchy and has some strategic depth. Hot dog.
This man loves his Bruno Catala.
Oh, I can't get over it. So Ant Gods of Egypt made it on, which is not a surprise, of course. Skull King made it on at 41.
Nice.
That's not a surprise.
Yep.
Because we know I love that. So some of the more surprising things had to do with, the most surprising entry on the list is Mosaic: A Story of Civilization. I don't know how this happened. I don't know why this happened. It seems like a bad idea all around.
Right.
Like this would be my most tentative recommendation when I'm giving you guys recommendations for games. I'd be like, you have to love a specific thing to like this game. And I just happen to like that stuff.
Right.
Like, it really reminds me of Elysium, the board game. Whereas Elysium is a great card game, really high on my list. I'll talk about that in a moment. But Mosaic felt like Elysium with a board. And so it just kind of lulled me into submission with that.
right.
So that was a very interesting addition. So these are the kind of recency bias ones that I'm like, is that going to show up? Because something that did happen was there was a recency bias game last year in Starship Samurai
Right.
that I fell from grace.
Wow.
Not on the list. And there's a few reasons for that. There's like this weird sort of turn order track or something in the game that's not really intuitive, and it's kind of annoying to figure out how that works. And that was kind of bugging me as in my memory. As I would remember, I'd be like, oh, what was that? Why was that there? But then also, my kids broke like a bunch of the miniatures. And that just put like a really sour taste in my mouth about this game. Like, I was just like, every time I look at it, I cringe because I'm just like thinking about that moment where Ethan like snaps a samurai sword off of a robot's hand or something. And so definitely an emotional reaction as to why
Wow.
that game fell off the list for sure. Another casualty that I'm quite sad about is Guillotine. Guillotine was a casualty from the list.
I'm
this
sad
year.
about that too.
Yeah, so I don't know what happened there.
Right. Well, and that's the thing is new games come up like there's always going to be a preponderance towards like if a thing drops 10 spaces, that's not even that surprising because something needs to like as 10 new games come onto this. Like I had 24 new games show up into my top 100. Whether they were some of those were new games, some of those were kind of old classics that just rose up. But that meant that like 24 games also had to like fall off my list.
Yes.
As well. So yeah, for me, those were the games that sort of fell off. Clank fell off of my top 100.
Okay.
Seven Wonders. Tammany Hall was in my top 100, but this is a game that I gave to a friend and I've never seen it since, and like I haven't seen that friend since. So it's just like God, but like I love it, but I just haven't played it forever, so it's just kind of,
and your
sadly
hatred
fell.
for your abandoned friendship is probably like...
That's right. Yes, exactly.
You have some bitter feelings here.
Yeah, well, sure. As well as like old, like kind of like legacy and or campaign style games that I've played that just sort of dropped off. So like Undaunted Normandy, I really enjoyed, but that kind of fell off the list just because like I've kind of completed. I could play it again and have a lot of fun with it. But I played it like a ton because I wanted to like make it through the campaign, and then now it's done. I'm like, cool, it can be on my shelf for a little while until I pull it off again, and maybe it comes back up.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
that's right. So for me, Cry Havoc was a game that I don't think made my list last year because I'd only played it once, and so I've played it more since then. And it came onto the list at 19. So that was like a high mover. Like this was Cry Havoc was on my list last year, but but I took it off because I didn't feel confident talking about it. So it was like low 90s kind of thing. But now it's on the list at 19, which I think is an excellent spot for it to be. I'm very happy about this. Other kind of movers. So Lords of Waterdeep is probably the game that moved the highest for me for no reason. I haven't played it since I played it a long time ago. Just my memories for it remain fond.
Right.
And so that was just, and get fonder, I guess. I have a couple friends, Tim and Kaylee. Well, you know them. That's kind of a game that they talk about as one of their favorites. And so as they've talked about it, I've just been remembering it, and so I guess that just kind of moved it up in the list for me. So that was interesting. I want to talk a little bit about my top 20 or so, because this is kind of the part of the list that I would look more to find out okay, what are the games that Daniel really likes? What are these, not all the games on the list I really like, but these are kind of the precious ones. You know? Last year, there were some disheartening things where Jamaica and Five Tribes had fallen. They were still in that top 20, but they were in the 16, 15 range. They were quite low. Maybe Jamaica was 19. It was tough. And so, because I had run into kind of problems where I realized that Five Tribes, while excellent, had kind of had an arc problem where it's the best game of all time in the very middle of the game. And then it just it's unruly at the beginning and there's nothing to do at the end. And so it's this, and that kind of weighed on me as I was doing the list last year. This year I was removed from that play, and so I was remembering it fondly again. So Five Tribes got back to number 6, which I think is a more appropriate place for Five Tribes for me. And then Jamaica is back at 9. And that's because I've been playing Jamaica a lot. It's my go-to. It's been getting played with lots of different people, and it's enjoyable every time. So Jamaica has been rescued from the depths of 18. God forbid.
Nice.
So I was happy about that. Big news for me is Elysium fell from my number 1.
Don't say it ain't so.
It's so. Oh. It's so. So what happened with Elysium is, again, I played it again a couple of times. And just there's one little hiccup about the game, especially at 2 players, but sometimes at 3, where there's cards that just don't come out of the deck to complete the sets you need to complete. So it's one thing if there's a set that you can complete and another player takes that card from you. That's one thing. That's the game. But when it just doesn't come. When the number 3 brown card just never shows up. Well, what are you supposed to do? Yes, you get a citizen. They have a solution for it. But it's pretty frustrating and pretty unsatisfying when that does happen. And so I had a game where I was noticing that problem come out. And there's a nice kind of 2-player variant that you use less cards. And so that kind of helps to alleviate that. But you still have that problem a bit. And so I had to kind of come face to face with the fact that there was a blemish on Elysium. It didn't go far. It only went to number 4.
Oh my gosh! Okay.
It still stayed. It still stayed.
I thought what you're talking about. I thought it was gonna be 230. But
no.
Got it.
No,
okay.
Just a 4.
Sure.
And so then in the gap comes Dogs of War and It's a Wonderful World, and then the number 1 game of all time is Dune Imperium, which I think is a game that can actually retain that spot repeatedly, can actually defend that spot.
Wow. Yeah. So surprising because you're terrible at this game.
Look, listen. You only know that because Dallas won't keep his mouth. It was fun. It was fun because Dallas watched our last video and he was like, "Did I really hurt your feelings?" No. It's oh, well, I'm sorry if I did. It was that was sweet. That was nice. But yes, I'm awful at Dune Imperium, but it's still great. And one thing that helps is that I don't play expansions hardly ever, but I have played both expansions of Dune Imperium, and they just reinvigorate the game in a nice way. So Dune Imperium is number 1. That's, yeah, I'm confident with that. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, so Elysium was my 100 last year, if you remember. So it dropped off the list. It dropped down to 145.
Wow.
So not that far. Like I say, a 40 drop is not that significant, but yeah, it's still a little bit of a drop, I think.
Still. It's sad that's not on your list at all.
That's right. Yeah, my top, the top games didn't change that much. I think aside from Boon Lake making it into my top 9, I feel like at least my top 10 was more or less pretty similar from last year. maybe like one shift or two. But
Brian Baru got high. What did that get?
so Brian Baru went up 7 places. So it was at
okay.
it was at 19 last year. It was up to 12 or 7. That's 7 places.
Okay.
I can do math. But there were some other big jumpers. Libertalia went up 47 places. I don't know how that happened, but I do really like Libertalia.
Well, you had played it, and this doesn't even have anything to do with the Stonemaier edition.
No. Yeah, no. This is I like the pirates.
Yeah.
Well,
Stonemeier's pirates are just cat pirates or animal pirates.
I like real pirates, Arr, matey, those kind of pirates. Also, like It's a Wonderful World went up 54 spaces. So that was a big jump. I think I played that a lot this year.
Okay.
With like the solo mode and like with other people.
Yeah.
So that was like a big riser for me. A handful of others like The King is Dead. Also, that went up 35 spaces. So it's currently at 27. So that was like a big riser, as well as I played some of the Academy games again, and so 1754 wasn't even on my list. It went up 65 spots to 72.
Okay.
And 1812 was not on my list either, and it showed up at 94.
Okay.
So those were kind of other big games that sort of rose up the list, and just playing them, I was like, I really like these old classic war games,
Yeah. Well, you love those games.
Yeah.
So, it makes sense that they're on your list. Other games for me that came on the list, Father Greg was a lot more organized in this conversation. I'm just all over the place.
That's right.
But a game that's going to make you mad that jumped onto my list was Isle of Cats. This made it as high as 16 for me.
16?
Yeah, what's Isle of Cats for you?
452.
Yeah, that's about right. So Isle of Cats, very high for me. And a game that popped onto the list that I had played before but didn't like it that much, but then you've watched my love for it grow. Glass Road came to 14.
Yes, I hear that. That was high.
Yeah, but I stand by it. Yeah, I'll play Glass Road anytime, any day.
You were on a stretch. There was like a good month where
Glass Road.
This man played Glass Road every chance he got.
Yeah, oh, it's so good. And so the game that I was curious about, it was in the middle of my list last year, Council of Four. And we have a history with Council of Four, where we played a 2-player game of Council of Four, and I pretty much just obliterated Father Greg. It's a game where you're essentially building routes out on a map. You use cards to influence the councils to gain property deeds to kind of put in the new edition, you put out like your ambassadors. In the old edition, you use like little houses. And you're basically building routes. And when you build onto a route, you activate all the rewards along that chain of routes. And so basically, I just built up my chain to such a degree that I was just miles ahead of you.
Yeah.
And
that was the first time we played it.
Yeah, and so you were bitter. You were bitter.
Yeah, I didn't like that game.
We were invited over to Dave's house. We had just did our top 10 board game designers, and Daniele Ticini made the list. And so he had the original edition of Council of Four set up for us to play.
Right.
And so there was another game of Paris set up as well at the same table, and so we split up into 3. So Father Greg and I were not playing together, and I played with Dave and Father Dan, his brother, and we played, and I don't know what to tell you, folks. Just Dave was scored 20. Dan scored 34, and I scored 118.
Smoked them out of the water. I could hear it from the other side of the table, man. They were not happy.
So it was a good time, really fun, made for a lot of laughter, but it definitely boogied up my list.
So that moved it up your list.
That moved it up my list.
Wow.
Yeah. It felt good, man.
Wow.
Yeah.
Before, so the last time we played it, Council of Four was at 422 for me.
Okay, and then you played it again.
So I played it again, and I don't know where it would be. Maybe 400. Maybe it moved up slightly. I do enjoy it. It's a good game.
Yes.
So yes, I just a few big falls too. Even just some are still in my top 100, but they just fell a lot of spaces. Some are out of my top 100. Actually, a lot of these are out of my top 100. One, maybe you were right about, was Taverns of Tiefenthal. Hey!
Yeah, die, Taverns hundreds of teams adult.
I mean, it dropped 60 spots, so it's at 118, so just outside my top 100. I still really enjoy it. But yes, perhaps your horrible review of this, did lower it a little bit in my mind.
Well, when someone you care about, and I assume you care about me at least a little, doesn't like something that you like, it tends to taint it a little bit. You know?
Right, that's true. Another game was Terraforming Mars.
Okay.
I had it was in my top 100 last year. This one fell 143 spots.
Wow.
So it's at 198
we
now.
We played it and we realized that it was a hunk of trash.
Yeah, I mean, it's like 188. It's still like the top half, but like,
right.
it's a fine game. It's a game that I still enjoy. But yeah, it's not anywhere near the top. But
all right, party people, let us know, what games do you love? What would make your top 10 list? What would make your top 100 list? Engage in the comments down below if you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to the channel. Please like the video. Please share with your friends about these two crazy guys who like board games. And until next time, party people,
have the best day.